The alarms screamed through the bridge of the warship. Commander Hana gripped the armrest of her command chair as another explosion rocked the vessel. Outside the viewing window, space burned with weapons, fire, and dying ships. "How many?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. Captain Day checked his console. 23 Krell ships confirmed. More coming through the jump point every minute. Hana felt her stomach tighten. Her small fleet had only 8 ships. They were supposed to guard the evacuation of Kalem 7, a frontier colony world. Thousands of civilians waited on transport ships below, unable to defend themselves. "We hold the line," Hana said firmly. "Those transports need more time." Day nodded, though worry showed in his eyes. The Krell were winning the war. For 200 years, they had pushed deeper into coalition space. World after world fell to their endless swarms. The insect-like creatures had one goal: consume everything. Lieutenant Yuna looked up from her station suddenly. "Commander, I'm detecting something strange." "Strange how?" Hana asked, watching another of her ships take heavy damage. "New contacts. Coming from uncharted space. The energy signatures are old. Really old." Yuna's fingers danced across her controls. "The computer is matching them to archival data from 300 years ago." Hana frowned. 300 years ago was when many species joined the coalition. But uncharted space held nothing but empty systems and dead worlds. Everyone knew that. "Could be a sensor ghost," Day suggested. "The battle is creating a lot of interference." Then space itself seemed to tear open. Bright flashes of light appeared as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. But these ships looked wrong. They were blocky and crude, covered in thick armor plating. Missiles hung from external racks on their hulls. Large guns jutted from turrets that seemed almost primitive. "What are those?" Day whispered. The strange ships opened fire immediately. But they didn't use energy weapons like every civilized species. Instead, they launched metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles trailing fire streaked toward the Krell formation. When they hit, the explosions were massive, far bigger than modern weapons. A Krell cruiser exploded into pieces, then another, and another. The unknown ships moved with purpose, positioning themselves between Hana's fleet and the enemy. They fought with a ferocity Hana had never seen. One ship rammed directly into a Krell vessel, tearing through its hull before detonating something inside. "They're using nuclear weapons," Yuna said in shock. "And kinetic kill vehicles, technologies we abandoned thousands of years ago." In less than 10 minutes, the Krell force was destroyed. The mysterious ships held formation, weapons still hot and ready. Hana's bridge crew sat in stunned silence. A communication signal came through. The language was old, one used for trade routes centuries ago. Hana's computer translated it. "This is Captain Sung of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. You're under our protection now." "Terran?" Day repeated. "That's impossible." But Hana remembered her history lessons. The Terrans humans were an old race that disappeared long ago. Their home world had been destroyed, everyone said. The species was extinct. Yet here they were. "This is Commander Hana of the Coalition Defense Force," she transmitted back. "We thank you for your assistance. But we thought your people were gone." There was a pause. Then a different voice came through. Female and calm. "We were gone. We're back now. And it looks like you need help." More Krell ships appeared at the jump point. The human vessels moved to intercept without hesitation. Hana watched as they fought with brutal efficiency. These weren't the elegant energy weapons of coalition ships. These were hammers, crude but devastating. One human ship took heavy damage. Instead of retreating, it accelerated forward, firing everything it had. It crashed into a Krell command vessel, and both exploded in a ball of fire. "They just sacrificed themselves," Yuna said quietly. Deliberately, the battle ended. The Krell retreated, something they rarely did. The human fleet maintained position around Hana's ships and the civilian transports. "Commander," Day said, "we're receiving a request to dock. Captain Sung wants to meet you in person." Hana took a deep breath. Her whole body felt strange. Humans were supposed to be legends. Stories told to young officers about the crazy species that used explosives in space. Most people believed they never really existed at all. Tell them they're welcome aboard, Hana said. An hour later, Hana stood in her ship's docking bay. The human shuttle was small and functional, painted in gray and white. When the door opened, she got her first look at them. Captain Sung was tall by coalition standards, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a uniform that looked practical rather than ceremonial. Behind him stood several other humans, all watching with careful attention. "Commander Hana," Sung said, bowing slightly in a gesture of respect. "Thank you for allowing us aboard. Thank you for saving us," Hana replied. She studied them closely. They looked almost like her species, the Valari, but different. Their bodies seemed denser, heavier. When they moved, there was a controlled strength to it. "We've been watching the war," Sung said. "The coalition is losing badly. The Krell push deeper every month." "You've been watching?" Day asked, a hint of anger in his voice. "Where have you been for 300 years? A female human stepped forward. She introduced herself as Lieutenant Nari. "Surviving," she said simply. "When our home world was threatened, we asked the coalition for help. No one answered. So we left. We've been building in the darkness beyond known space ever since." Hana felt shame wash over her. The coalition had abandoned these people to die, and now they returned to help anyway. "Why come back?" Hana asked. "Why help us after we failed you?" Sung looked at her with those intense eyes. "Because extinction is worse than betrayal. The Krell don't just want your worlds. They want to erase everything. We know what that feels like. We won't let it happen to others." Alarms blared again. More Krell ships were coming. Sung smiled. But it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of a predator. "Let us show you how humans fight. Let us show you how humans fight." As the humans rushed back to their shuttle, Hana felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The legends had returned, and they brought fire with them. The war was about to change. The Coalition command station floated in space like a massive city. High Chancellor Wu stood before the Great Council chamber. Looking at representatives from hundreds of species, everyone was talking at once, and chaos filled the room. "Order!" Wu shouted, his forearms raised high. "I will have order." The chamber slowly quieted. Wu looked tired. The war with the Krell had aged him badly over the past decades. Now, this new development added another problem. "Let us review the facts," Wu said. 3 days ago, unknown ships engaged the Krell near Kalem 7. These ships claim to be Terran human, but humans have been extinct for 300 years. A representative from the Kiak species stood up. "This must be a trick. Perhaps the Krell created fake ships to confuse us. The ships use primitive nuclear weapons and kinetic projectiles." Another representative added. "No one has used such crude technology in millennia. Why would the Krell pretend to be so backward?" Wu raised a hand for silence. "Captain Sung and his diplomatic officer are here. They've agreed to meet with us. I suggest we listen before making judgments." The chamber doors opened. Captain Sung walked in, flanked by Lieutenant Nari and 2 human soldiers. Every eye in the room fixed on them. Some representatives leaned forward with curiosity. Others drew back in fear or disgust. Sung bowed respectfully. "Honorable Chancellor, Council members." "Captain Sung," Wu said carefully, "you claim to be human, but our records show Earth was destroyed 300 years ago. All humans died. How do you explain this?" Nari stepped forward. She activated a holographic display. It showed a planet Earth with a yellow sun. "This is our homeworld 300 years ago." Beautiful, wasn't it? The image changed. The sun began to pulse with strange energy. Numbers and calculations filled the screen. "Our scientists detected a solar anomaly," Nari continued. "The sun was becoming unstable. In 50 years, maybe less, It would have destroyed everything in our system, the council members murmured. This matched some of their old records. We sent out calls for help, Nari said, her voice hardening. We asked the coalition for evacuation assistance. We asked for technology to move our planets. We asked for anything. And? Wu asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Nothing, Sung said flatly. No one answered. No one came. We were a small species, not important enough to save, so we saved ourselves. The hologram showed massive ships being built, crude generation vessels that would take centuries to reach another habitable system. Billions of humans boarded them. Earth was evacuated completely. We jumped into dark space, Nari explained. Beyond the mapped regions. We traveled for decades, living in ships. Children were born who never touched ground. People died never seeing a sun again. But we survived. We found a system, Sung added. Not perfect, but livable. We built new worlds in the darkness. We had no one to trade with, no one to help us. Everything we have, we made ourselves. Wu felt the weight of old guilt. The coalition had failed these people. Now they stood before him, hardened by centuries of isolation. Why return now? Wu asked. You could have stayed hidden forever. Because we detected Krell movements, heading toward our space, Sung said. And because extinction is coming for you. Maybe we're still angry about being abandoned. But we won't stand by and watch genocide. A counselor from the Roth species stood up angrily. You use barbaric weapons. Nuclear bombs and bullets. These things are banned by every civilized species. Sung's expression didn't change. We use what works. When you're fighting for survival, you don't care about being civilized. You care about winning. How many ships do you have? Wu asked. 400 warships currently operational, Nari replied. Another 200 under construction. We also have support vessels, troop transports, and supply chains. The council chamber erupted in shock. That was more ships than several coalition members combined. How had one species, alone in the dark, built such a fleet? Admiral Tay entered the chamber then. He was older than Sung, with gray in his hair and scars on his face. He looked like someone who had seen too much war. I am Admiral Tay, commander of the human fleet, he said. His voice was rough. Let me be clear about our position. We're offering help, not asking permission. We'll fight the Krell, whether you want us to or not, but we'll be more effective if we work together. You're demanding we give you intelligence and resources, a counselor said. Why should we trust you? Tay's eyes were cold. Because you're losing. Every month, you lose more ground. More worlds burn. More people die. Your elegant energy weapons and careful tactics aren't working. You need someone who fights dirty. Wu wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The human was right. The coalition was losing badly. We need proof, Wu said. Proof that you can make a difference, Sung nodded. Give us one battle. One chance to show you what humans can do. While the politicians argued, Specialist Ari worked in her laboratory on the station. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien species. The humans had agreed to medical scans, and what Ari found disturbed her deeply. She pulled up the data on her screen. Human biology was frightening. Their muscle density was twice normal. Their skeletal structure could withstand massive damage. They had redundant organs and a circulatory system that seemed designed for trauma, but most disturbing was their brain chemistry. When threatened, humans produced chemicals called adrenaline and endorphins. These made them faster, stronger, and able to ignore pain. They could fight while wounded in ways that would drop any other species. They're living weapons, Ari whispered to herself. Evolution made them into warriors. She thought about the video she'd watched from the Kalem 7 battle. A human ship, heavily damaged, had rammed a Krell vessel deliberately. The crew had sacrificed themselves, without hesitation. What kind of species could do that? Ari activated her communication device. Chancellor Wu, I need to speak with you urgently about the humans. 3 hours later, Wu sat in his office, reading Ari's report. His hands shook slightly. They're dangerous, Ari said. Not in a malicious way, but in their nature. Humans evolved as predators on a harsh world. They're biologically designed for violence. Should we refuse their help? Wu asked. Ari was quiet for a moment. No, she finally said. We need them. The Krell are worse. But Chancellor, we need to understand what we're unleashing. Humans don't think like us. They see death differently. They see sacrifice differently. Wu looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krell were coming. And now humans were here. Legends made flesh. Ghosts returned from the dark. Arrange the battle test, Wu ordered. Let's see what our legends can really do. In their ships, the humans prepared for war. They cleaned weapons that seemed ancient. They checked armor and loaded missiles. Captain Sung stood on his bridge, looking at an old photograph of Earth, the world they'd lost. We're home, he said quietly. Not to our world, but to where we belong, fighting for survival. Lieutenant Nari stood beside him. Do you think they'll accept us? Sung smiled grimly. They will. Because they have no choice. And we'll show them that sometimes legends are exactly what you need. The test battle was coming, and the humans were ready to remind the galaxy why they should have been feared, not forgotten. Commander Hana walked through the corridors of the human warship Indomitable. Everything felt wrong here. The walls were bare metal. Exposed pipes ran overhead, and the smell of oil and machinery filled the air. Coalition ships were clean and elegant. This was a factory that could fight. Watch your head, Captain Hyun said, ducking under a low doorway. He commanded this vessel, and he moved through it like someone who knew every centimeter. We built these ships for function, not beauty. Hana followed him onto the bridge. It was cramped compared to her own ship. Crew members sat at stations, surrounded by screens and switches. Everything looked manual, as if the computers couldn't be fully trusted. You're assigned to observe us, Hyun said. The Chancellor wants to know if we're worth the risk. So, watch carefully. They were heading to the Gorham system, where Krell forces had taken over 2 planets. The Coalition had tried to retake it 3 times and failed each time. Now the humans would try. What's your plan? Hana asked. Hyun smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We're going to make them angry. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the Krell formation. Coalition tactics said this was suicide. You were supposed to arrive at the edge of a system and approach carefully. The humans didn't care about proper tactics. Immediately, the human ships opened fire. Missiles streaked across space. Railguns fired metal slugs at impossible speeds. The Krell, surprised by the sudden attack, took heavy casualties in the first minute. But there were many Krell ships. They surrounded the human fleet and began firing back. Hana watched in horror as human vessels took damage. Armor plating tore away. Explosions ripped through hulls. Captain, we're taking heavy fire, a crew member reported. Good, Hyun said calmly. That means they're focused on us. Suddenly, dozens of small objects appeared around the Krell formation. They'd been placed there earlier, hidden and silent. Now they activated mines loaded with nuclear warheads. They detonated all at once. The Krell formation shattered. Ships tumbled through space, damaged and confused. The human fleet regrouped and pressed the attack. That's why we let them hit us, Hyun explained to Hana. We made them focus on our ships while we positioned the real threat. They think like a swarm, all acting together. We think like individuals who can lie and trick, but the battle wasn't over. The Krell regrouped and counterattacked. A human destroyer took critical damage. Its engines were gone. Weapons offline. The Star Shadow is finished, a crew member reported. They're requesting evacuation orders. Denied, Hyun said. Execute protocol endgame. Hana watched as the damaged ship changed course. It pointed directly at the largest Krell vessel and accelerated using emergency thrusters. What are they doing? Hana asked, though she already knew. Winning, Hyun said quietly. The Star Shadow crashed into the Krell command ship. Its reactor detonated, taking the enemy vessel and 3 others nearby. Hana felt sick. 200 humans had just died deliberately. You murdered your own people, she whispered. Hyun turned to her, and his eyes were hard. No. They volunteered. Every human crew knows what Protocol Endgame means. When your ship is dead, you make sure it takes enemies with it. They chose this. They chose to matter. The battle ended with a human victory. But Hana couldn't celebrate. She'd watched a kind of warfare she didn't understand. One where death was a weapon, not a failure. Later, she went to the human marine deck. She needed to understand these people better. She found Sergeant Jin training with his squad. They practiced hand-to-hand combat with an intensity that seemed excessive. Sergeant Jin, Hana called out. May I speak with you? Jin was shorter than most humans, but his body was thick with muscle. Scars marked his arms and face. He bowed respectfully. Of course. Commander. Why do you train so hard? Hana asked. Your weapons are already superior to ours. Jin wiped sweat from his face. Weapons fail. Ships break. Armor cracks. But a human who refuses to quit? That doesn't break. We train because we might have to fight with bare hands. And if we do, we'll win with those too. He showed her their training room. Humans practiced with rifles that used chemical explosives to fire metal bullets, ancient technology that somehow remained effective. They practiced boarding actions in zero gravity. They practiced fighting while injured. Every human is raised with the memory of Earth, Jin explained. We learn about the evacuation, the ships that broke down in transit, the generation that lived and died in cold darkness between stars. We learn that survival isn't guaranteed. You fight for it every day. That sounds exhausting, Hana said. It is, Jin agreed. But it's also freedom. We don't expect the universe to be fair or kind. We expect it to be harsh. So, we're never surprised by cruelty. Hana watched as a female pilot entered the room. Lieutenant Mina was younger than most of the crew, but she had the same hard edge they all carried. Commander Hana, Mina said. Captain Hyun told me you wanted to understand human psychology. I'm a bomber pilot. Want to fly with me tomorrow? Hana agreed, though she felt nervous. Human pilots had a reputation for reckless flying. The next day, Hana strapped into the seat behind Mina in a small attack craft. The cockpit was cramped, with manual controls and basic displays. Mina handled the craft with easy confidence. They launched during another battle. The Krell had sent reinforcements to Gorim, hoping to overwhelm the human fleet. Mina dove into the fight without hesitation. Coalition pilots stay at safe range, Mina explained over the communication system. They fire energy weapons from far away. Watch what we do different. Mina flew straight at a Krell cruiser. Hana gripped her seat as weapons fire flashed past them. At the last moment, Mina released her bombs and pulled up hard. The explosions tore through the Krell ship's armor. We get close because it's effective, Mina said. Yes. It's dangerous. But war is dangerous. Pretending otherwise just gets more people killed in the long run. They flew through debris fields and weapons fire. Mina took hits that would have made coalition pilots retreat. She kept fighting, kept attacking. Hana realized something profound: these humans didn't fight to survive the battle. They fought to win the war, even if individuals didn't survive. Then, disaster struck. A Krell fighter appeared behind them, weapons charging. Mina tried to evade, but they were too slow. The shot hit their engine. We're finished, Hana said, panic rising. Mina's hands moved across the controls. Her face was calm. No, we're useful. She aimed their crippled craft at a Krell weapons platform below. Eject, Commander. Now. What about you? Hana asked. I'm making sure we count, Mina said. Eject. That's an order. Hana hit the ejection button. Her seat launched into space just as Mina dove the bomber into the Krell platform. The explosion destroyed it completely, saving dozens of human ships from its weapons. Hana floated in space, waiting for rescue, and cried. She cried for Mina's sacrifice. She cried for the Star Shadow crew. She cried because she finally understood. Humans didn't value death. They valued purpose. They valued making sure their lives mattered. And in war, sometimes that meant choosing the moment and manner of your end. When a human rescue ship picked up Hana, Sergeant Jin was there. He looked at her tear-stained face and nodded with understanding. "Now you know," he said gently. "This is how we survived 300 years of darkness. This is how we'll help you survive the Krell. We fight with everything we have, holding nothing back." Back on the Indomitable, Captain Hyun met with Hana. "Will you report that we're monsters?" he asked. Hana thought carefully. "No," she finally said. "I'll report that you're warriors. Real warriors, not like us. We forgot what war truly costs." "You never did," Hyun nodded. "The coalition fights to minimize losses. Noble, but ineffective. We fight to end threats permanently. It costs more up front, but saves more lives eventually." Specialist Ari's research confirmed what Hana had witnessed. Human biology actually rewarded combat behavior. Their brains produced chemicals that made fighting feel purposeful. They could experience something called flow state in battle, where everything became clear and focused. "They're addicted to meaning," Ari reported to Chancellor Wu. "Not violence itself, but purposeful action. Sacrifice for others triggers their reward systems. They're biologically wired to be heroes." Wu watched the battle reports. The humans were winning fights the coalition couldn't. They were pushing the Krell back. But the cost in human lives was staggering. "Do we accept their help?" he asked Ari. "Yes," she said. "Because they're offering to pay the price we can't afford. They're willing to burn so we might shine." The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Legends weren't pretty stories about noble heroes. Legends were about people who did what was necessary, no matter how terrible, and humanity had become a legend, written in fire and sacrifice. The Coalition Council chambers had never been so divided. Senator Sora stood at the speaker's platform, her voice filled with passion and fear. Behind her, holographic images showed human Marines in battle, covered in blood, fighting with brutal efficiency. "Look at them," Sora shouted. "They're savages. They kill without mercy. They sacrifice their own people like they're nothing. Is this what we want in the coalition? War beasts who know only violence?" Other senators murmured agreement. Over the past months, humanity had helped push the Krell back from a dozen systems. But the methods frightened many species. Humans didn't fight clean wars. They fought to win at any cost. "They use nuclear weapons in populated areas," another senator added. "They board enemy ships and fight hand-to-hand. They torture Krell prisoners for information. These aren't civilized actions." High Chancellor Wu listened to the complaints. He understood their fear. Humans were different, aggressive in ways the coalition had tried to evolve beyond. But the results were undeniable. Captain Day stood up. Once, he would have agreed with Sora. But he'd fought beside Commander June of the Terran Marines for 3 months now. He'd seen things that changed his mind. "Permission to speak, Chancellor." Wu nodded. "Captain Day, you've worked closely with human forces. Share your observations." Day walked to the center of the chamber. "Senator Sora is right. Humans are brutal in combat. They do things we find disturbing, but I've learned something important. They're brutal to end wars quickly, not because they enjoy killing." He activated his own holographic display. It showed a human field hospital. Medics worked frantically to save wounded soldiers, both coalition and even captured Krell. "This is the human medical team attached to my unit," Day explained. "They ran into enemy fire to rescue my wounded soldiers. 3 humans died saving my crew. These aren't monsters. They're people who understand that war is terrible, so they try to finish it fast. By any means necessary? Sora challenged. Where do we draw the line? The line is simple, Day replied. They fight to end threats, not to commit genocide. They could have exterminated captured Krell. They don't. They study them, try to understand them, hope to find a way to coexist eventually. Commander June was invited to speak next. He walked into the chamber in full combat armor, still dirty from the last battle. He didn't apologize for his appearance. I understand your fear, June said bluntly. You should fear us. We're dangerous, but direct your fear properly. We're dangerous to your enemies, not to you, unless you become our enemy. Is that a threat? Sora demanded. It's a fact, June replied. Humans make terrible enemies because we don't quit. Ever. But we also make the best friends because we're loyal to the end. The Coalition abandoned us 300 years ago. You left us to die, and we came back to help you anyway. That should tell you something about who we are. The chamber fell silent. June's words carried weight because they were true. Admiral Tay entered then, and the atmosphere changed. He commanded respect even from those who feared humanity. He'd led every major victory against the Krell in recent months. Senators, I'm going to be very direct, Tay said. You're losing this war. Without human intervention, the Krell would have taken 15 more worlds by now. Billions of your people would be dead. Instead, we've pushed them back. And yes, we've done it with methods you don't like. He pulled up casualty reports. In the last 6 months, Coalition losses are down 60%. Krell advances have stopped completely. We've even reclaimed 3 occupied worlds. This is the reality. You don't have to like our methods, but you need our results. At what cost? Sora asked. Human casualties are 3 times higher than any Coalition force. Because we take the dangerous jobs, Tay replied. We volunteer for suicide missions. We hold the line when others would retreat. Not because we're stupid, but because someone has to. And we decided it should be us. Lieutenant Yuna had been analyzing battle data. She stood and added her perspective. The humans practice something they call economy of force. They sacrifice small numbers to save large numbers. 50 humans die to save 5,000 civilians. It's brutal mathematics, but it works. It's inhuman, Sora insisted. Yes, Tay agreed. It is inhuman. It's human. Our species learned hard lessons in the dark, between stars. We learned that survival requires difficult choices. You can judge those choices from your safe council chambers. We'll keep making them on the battlefield. Wu called for order. Admiral Tay, we appreciate your service. But concerns about human methods are valid. The Coalition has laws about warfare. Rules about what's acceptable. Tay's expression hardened. Chancellor, with respect, your laws were written by species who forgot what real war means. You had centuries of peace before the Krell. You made rules for polite conflicts. This isn't polite. The Krell don't follow your rules. They consume everything. So we fight with what works, not what's comfortable. He approached the Chancellor's platform. Let me tell you what I told my fleet before we came here. I said, we were never legends. We were survivors. We were ordinary people who refused to surrender to the darkness. Now we have a choice. Let the Coalition fall and wait for the Krell to find us eventually. Or step forward and fight for species that abandoned us. It's an easy choice. Because that's what humans do. We fight for others, even when they don't deserve it. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Even Sora seemed affected by his words. You want to know the truth about humans? Tay continued. Here it is. We're not special. We're not superior. We're just stubborn. When every logical species would quit, we keep going. When survival is impossible, we try anyway. And sometimes, against all odds, we succeed. He activated one more holographic display. It showed a message they'd intercepted from Krell Command. The translation was rough, but clear enough. The new enemy does not behave rationally. They accept casualties that should break their will. They fight past the point of defeat. They sacrifice themselves for non-genetic group members. Recommend avoiding direct conflict with Terran forces. Threat level: maximum. The Krell fear us, Tay said simply. Not because we're stronger or more advanced. Because we're unpredictable and relentless. That's worth more than any weapon. Wu looked at the other senators. He saw fear, but also hope. The coalition needed hope desperately. The question before us, Wu said slowly, is whether we accept humanity's help fully. This means sharing intelligence, resources, and command authority. It means accepting their methods, even when we disagree with them. It means trusting them. After they abandoned us? Sora asked bitterly. We abandoned them first, Captain Day reminded her gently. 300 years ago, when they needed us most. They remember. But they came back anyway. Lieutenant Nari spoke up from where she stood with the human delegation. We don't ask you to love us. We don't even ask you to like us. We ask you to recognize that the Krell won't stop until everything is consumed. We're offering you a chance to survive. Take it or don't. But decide quickly, because they're not waiting. Specialist Ari stood as well. I've studied human biology and psychology extensively. They're dangerous, yes. But that danger is directed outward, at threats, to their friends. They're incredibly loyal. Humans bond across species barriers more easily than any race I've studied. They'll die for you, if you accept them. Wu made his decision. We vote now. All in favor of full coalition integration for humanity, including command authority and resource sharing? The vote was close, but it passed. Sora voted against, along with 20% of the council, but the majority agreed. Tay bowed deeply. You won't regret this. We'll prove we're worthy of your trust. You already have, Wu said. Now let's win this war. Later, Lieutenant Yuna received urgent intelligence. She ran to find Commander Hana and Admiral Tay. They were in the war room, planning the next offensive. We've decrypted Krell communications, Yuna said breathlessly. They're planning something massive. A final offensive against the Coalition core worlds. Every ship they have. Attacking all at once. Tay studied the data. His face went pale. When? Tay stud. Tay stud. Tay stud. Tay stud. Tay stud. Tay stud. 3 weeks. Maybe less. Hana felt her heart sink. We don't have the ships to stop an attack of that scale. Even with human reinforcements, Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was terrible to see. We don't need to stop them everywhere. We need to cut off the head. If we destroy their central command structure, the swarm loses coordination. That would mean attacking their home cluster, Hana said. That's suicide. It's deep in Krell space, defended by thousands of ships. Yes, Tay agreed. It's suicide. Unless you're human, and suicide is just another tactic. He activated the fleet-wide communication. All Terran ships. This is Admiral Tay. Prepare for Operation Last Legend. We're going to end this war. June looked at the operational plan and laughed, a sound without humor. You're insane. I love it. When do we leave? Tomorrow, Tay said. We don't have time for anything else. Hana grabbed Tay's arm. You can't ask your people to do this. It's guaranteed death for most of the fleet. Tay looked at her with those hard human eyes. I'm not asking. I'm offering them a chance to be legends, to be remembered forever, to die for something that matters. Every human will volunteer. Watch. He was right. When the mission was announced, every human ship volunteered. Every soldier, every pilot, every crew member. They knew most wouldn't come back. They went anyway. This is what we do, Captain Sung explained to Hana. This is what makes us human. We face the darkness so others don't have to. The fleet prepared for the impossible mission. And the galaxy watched. wondering if legends could really change the course of history. The human fleet hung in space at the edge of Krell territory. 400 ships, knowing most would never return. Inside the Indomitable, Admiral Tay addressed his commanders one last time. "We didn't survive 300 years in the dark just to watch another species face extinction," he said. "Today, we finish what we started. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We become the shield that breaks against the enemy so others may live. This is our purpose. This is our legacy." Commander Hana stood on the bridge of her own ship, part of the Coalition volunteer force. Against all orders, she and 50 other Coalition captains had insisted on joining. Captain Day was beside her. "We should have stayed behind," Day said nervously. "This isn't our fight." "It became our fight when they chose to help us," Hana replied. "Humans taught us something important. Sometimes you fight not because you'll win, but because it's right." The fleet jumped into Krell space. Immediately, thousands of enemy ships appeared on sensors. The Krell home cluster was a massive fortress. Worlds and stations connected by defensive networks. No force had ever penetrated this deep before. "All ships," Tay broadcast. "Execute attack pattern Dragon's Teeth. Hit them everywhere at once. Make them think we're larger than we are." The human ships split into dozens of small groups, attacking different targets simultaneously. Missiles and railgun fire tore through Krell formations. Nuclear warheads detonated like miniature suns. The humans fought with desperate fury. Captain Hyun commanded his ship straight into the thickest fighting. "Remember," he told his crew, "we're not here to survive. We're here to win." Sergeant Jin led boarding parties onto Krell stations. Human Marines fought in zero gravity, using magnetic boots and chemical weapons. They planted charges in critical systems, destroying defense platforms from within. Jin watched as his soldiers fell one by one. But each death bought time for the mission. A Krell blade caught Jin in the chest. He fell, blood floating in the zero gravity. His squad wanted to help him, but he waved them on. "Complete the mission," he gasped. "I'll hold here. I'll hold here." Jin armed all his remaining grenades and waited. When the Krell came, he detonated them. The explosion destroyed an entire section of the station. In space, Captain Sung's ship was surrounded and taking massive damage. His engines were gone, weapons failing. He opened communication to Lieutenant Nari on another ship. "Nari, take command of the fleet if Tay falls." "Captain, we can evacuate you." "No," Sung interrupted. "I'm right where I need to be. Tell Earth's children we did our duty." Sung aimed his dying ship at a Krell megastructure and fired all remaining thrusters. The collision destroyed both vessels and created a chain reaction that took out 6 more enemy ships. Lieutenant Yuna watched the battle from her tactical station. The losses were staggering. 60% of the human fleet was gone. But they were winning. The Krell coordination was breaking down. The swarm was confused. "There," she shouted, pointing at her screen. "That's the command vessel. The Krell Queen is there." Tay saw it too. A massive ship at the center of the cluster, protected by hundreds of defenders. "All remaining ships, form on me. We're going through." The Indomitable led the charge. Human ships followed, firing everything they had. Coalition vessels joined them. It was madness, flying into certain death. But they flew anyway. Hana's ship took multiple hits. Systems failed across the board. "We're finished," Day said. "No," Hana replied, remembering what humans taught her. "We're useful." She turned her ship toward a Krell battlecruiser and accelerated. "Evacuate the ship. Everyone to escape pods." "Now." "What about you?" Day asked. Hana smiled. "I'm making sure we count." Her ship crashed into the Krell vessel, tearing through its armor. Both ships exploded. Day's escape pod tumbled through space, and he watched his commander die like a human would with purpose. The Indomitable reached the Queen's command ship. Tay's vessel was barely functional. Hull breaches everywhere. Life support failing. Half his crew was dead. "Admiral," We need to retreat, his tactical officer pleaded. Tay shook his head. We're exactly where we need to be. He looked at an old photograph he kept Earth from space, the world humanity had lost. We're coming home, he whispered. Then he opened fleet-wide communication one last time. To all Coalition species listening, we were never legends. We were survivors. We were ordinary people who refused to surrender to the darkness. Remember that. When the next threat comes, when the next war begins, remember that heroes aren't born special. They're ordinary beings who choose to stand when they could run. He paused, looking at his remaining crew. They nodded, understanding what came next. They'd all volunteered for this. We lived only as legend, Tay said softly. Now we die to make legends real. He activated the reactor overload. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Queen's ship. The collision was catastrophic. The reactor detonated at point-blank range, destroying both vessels utterly. The Krell Queen died. Without her coordination, the swarm faltered. Ships drifted without purpose. The organized defense collapsed into chaos. Lieutenant Nari, now in command of what remained of the human fleet, saw the opening. All ships, full attack. For Tay. For Sung. For everyone, we've lost. The remaining human ships, less than 100, now pressed the attack with renewed fury. Coalition forces joined them. Together, they tore through the confused Krell forces. Captain June led ground forces into the Krell breeding chambers. They destroyed the facilities that produced new warriors. Without reinforcements, the Krell couldn't sustain their war. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it ended, the Krell home cluster was destroyed. Their ability to wage war was broken. The swarm would take decades to recover, if ever, but the cost was terrible. 300 human ships destroyed. 20,000 human soldiers dead. 50 coalition ships lost. Among the dead, Admiral Tay, Captain Sung, Commander Hana, Sergeant Jin, and thousands more. Lieutenant Nari stood on the bridge of her damaged ship and wept. They'd won. They'd saved the galaxy. But so many friends were gone. Captain Day was rescued from his escape pod. When he heard about Hana's sacrifice, he broke down. She'd learned from humans how to give everything for a cause greater than yourself. The survivors limped home. As they approached Coalition space, every ship came out to meet them. Millions of beings watched on screens across hundreds of worlds as the battered fleet returned. High Chancellor Wu stood at Coalition Command, watching the arrival. Tears ran down his face. "Prepare the memorial," he ordered quietly. The memorial was built on Primus Station, visible to all who entered Coalition space. It was a massive wall of names. Every human and Coalition soldier who died in Operation Last Legend. At the top, words were carved in every Coalition language. They lived only as legend until we needed them. They fought not for glory, but for survival. They burned so we may shine. We will not forget. The ceremony was attended by representatives from every Coalition species. Even Senator Sora came, her opposition forgotten in the face of such sacrifice. Specialist Ari spoke for the scientific community. Humans taught us that evolution doesn't always move toward peace. Sometimes, it moves toward survival at any cost. They were warriors because their world demanded it, but they were also protectors because their hearts demanded it. We're alive because they existed. Captain June accepted humanity's full Coalition membership on behalf of his species. His armor still bore scars from the final battle. "We didn't do this for thanks," June said. "We did it because extinction is unacceptable. The Krell wanted to erase everything beautiful in the galaxy. We couldn't allow that. Yes, we paid a terrible price, but the price of doing nothing would have been higher." He looked at the memorial wall. "These names represent more than soldiers. They represent what humanity is. We're the species that doesn't quit. The species that stands when others fall. The species that remembers being abandoned and chooses to help anyway. That's our legacy." Lieutenant Yuna presented the final battle data. The war was over. The Krell were broken, scattered, no longer a threat. It would take the Coalition years to rebuild, but they would survive. Humanity lost 60% of their fleet, Yuna reported. But they broke the enemy completely. Their sacrifice saved billions of lives, perhaps trillions. If the Krell had continued, Wu made an announcement. Humanity will be granted 3 core worlds to rebuild their population. They'll have full representation in the council, and all human veterans will receive the Coalition Star of Honor, our highest award for valor. Nari accepted the honor, though it felt hollow. She'd rather have her friends back. That night, she stood alone, looking at Earth's coordinates. The sun had stabilized centuries ago. Earth was habitable again. We're going home, she told the empty space. Really home this time. And we'll take our friends with us. The Coalition began the long process of peace. Krell survivors were offered terms. Some accepted and integrated into Coalition society. Others fled to distant space. Captain Hyun survived the battle, though badly wounded. He spent months in recovery. When he could walk again, he visited the memorial every day. I should have died with them, he told a visiting Day. No, Day replied. You need to live. To remember. To make sure their story is told correctly. Hyun nodded slowly. We'll write it down. Every battle. Every sacrifice. So future generations know what real courage looks like. Years passed. The first human child born in peacetime arrived on a reconstructed colony world. Her parents named her Hope, and it seemed appropriate. Humanity's population began growing again. The dark years were ending. The Coalition changed too. They adopted some human military doctrines, not the brutal parts, but the effective ones. They learned that sometimes, you need to be willing to sacrifice to protect what matters. A new academy was founded on Earth after it was reclaimed. It trained soldiers from all Coalition species in human tactics. The motto above the entrance read, Legends aren't born. They're forged. Day became an instructor there. He taught about Hana's sacrifice, about human courage, about the price of freedom. His students came from dozens of species, all learning from humanity's example. Nari eventually became an admiral, commanding the new joint Coalition human fleet. She never forgot the friends she lost. Their photographs lined her office wall. We were just ordinary people, she told her officers. That's what made us legends. We did extraordinary things because the situation demanded it. Never forget any of you could be heroes. You just need the courage to try. The memorial on Primus Station became a pilgrimage site. Millions visited every year. They stood before the wall of names and remembered the species that came back from extinction to save strangers. Children learned about Operation Last Legend in schools. They learned about Admiral Tay's final words, about Captain Sung's sacrifice, about humans who chose death with purpose over life with shame. And slowly, the galaxy changed. Species that once fought only for themselves began fighting for each other. The human example spread like fire, igniting courage in millions of hearts. Senator Sora visited the memorial privately, late at night. She stood before Tay's name and whispered an apology. I was wrong about you. All of you. You weren't monsters. You were what we needed to become. In the empty corridor, her words seemed to echo. And somewhere, perhaps, the ghosts of fallen legends heard and forgave. Humanity never forgot their dark years. But they also never forgot that they'd returned from darkness to bring light. They'd lived only as legend until the galaxy needed them, and when needed, they'd given everything. The war was over. The legends were at peace. And across 1,000 worlds, beings lived and loved and dreamed, protected by the sacrifice of those who refused to be forgotten. The story of humanity became the story the galaxy told itself in dark times. When all seemed lost, they remembered. Ordinary beings did extraordinary things once. They could do it again, and in that remembrance, hope survived, just like humanity always had.